Fantastic. Okay, so for everyone joining, we'll be starting in a minute. We'll just let all the attendees to arrive. A few more panelists. Welcome, Kumuda.
Hi.
G'day. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, I'll begin. So first I'll begin with the acknowledgement of country. So the city of Ballarat stands on the traditional lands of the Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung peoples. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So welcome to the 2020 BREAZE Green Drinks Ballarat Local Election Candidate Forum. Thanks for coming, and I hope everyone is okay during these strange times during COVID. Just a quick word of introduction of BREAZE and Green Drinks. BREAZE was formed in December 2006 after Ballarat's Walk Against Warming, formed by a group of concerned citizens for climate change. It's a non-for-profit, and it's committed to reducing Ballarat's greenhouse gas emissions through renewable energy and community action. So this will mark the 7th year of Green Drinks as well. So last month was the first time Green Drinks went online. Green Drinks occurs in towns throughout the world. The format is that every month there's a talk, and so this month is the candidate forum. So welcome. And just about me, my name's Tony Goodfellow, and I'm on the board of BREAZE, which is running Green Drinks, which I'm hosting. Tonight is a special occasion, and I thank all the candidates for participating and for their time tonight. We'll begin with broad questions on climate asked to all candidates. Each will have 3 minutes to answer, then another question on the environment, and each candidate will have 2 minutes. I'm just going to be really strict with time. So David Harris, he's not here. So he was an apology. He did complete the BREAZE candidate survey along with many candidates here tonight, which was circulated with the BREAZE members and friends. So that's about 2,000 people. For those watching, thank you for coming along. Please submit questions by clicking on the question and answer box down on the bottom of the Zoom page. The event is being recorded for Green Drinks Facebook page for those who couldn't attend. So we have Paul from BREAZE who will be monitoring questions, and he'll select them. So after the general questions, I'll do a round robin to each candidate. So a question to each, and then we'll do another question. And Paul will also be moderating for inappropriate language. So first question, the general climate change question. Can you please just introduce yourself briefly and then answer, what is your role as a councillor for addressing climate change? What measures would you introduce and support to tackle climate change? So I'll start with the South Ward with Bridget Aitchison, please. If you can unmute. Sorry, Bridget, you're muted. Sorry.
Of course I am. I'm Bridget Aitchison, and of course I'm running in South Ward. The environment is one of my priorities. I'm the campus dean at ACU, and I chair the livability project team for Committee for Ballarat, whose board I'm almost on. So for nearly 2 years, I've been pursuing an environmental agenda for committee and the livability project team. As we did our investigations and talked to people and looked at what the important issues were, we discovered that the climate crisis and the renewable energy benefits to Ballarat became a huge part of livability. And while there are other things, we were also looking for the big idea for Committee for Ballarat to pursue. And I know it's worked with BREAZE in the past, and I know it's run several forums on this issue. But the reality is that our climate is in crisis. And I've said in my op-eds that at the end, it doesn't matter whether you agree with me or not. It's better to pursue this and not need to than not pursue it and discover too late we should have. And if we can attract the renewable energy industry to Ballarat, we can be a national leader in the generation, storage, and transmission of that energy. And in doing that, we not only provide cheaper energy, not just for the council buildings, but for every resident and business, as well as create new jobs, which is something badly needed in this post-COVID recovery. So we get a 2-for-1 by pursuing environmental sustainability. We improve the air we breathe, the waters we fish and play in, the ground that we nurture food from. We create jobs, we create training opportunities, we attract a whole new industry to Ballarat, which will then attract other manufacturing industries, and we create jobs. And this is a present reality. This is no longer a fringe idea. There are other regional towns that have created microgrids for the town, but we can go beyond that to actually exporting excess energy. And instead of being carbon neutral, we could become carbon negative. The technology, the equipment, and the partners, the business partners willing to do that exist, and it's something we can do here. And I think to answer your question about council's role, it's our responsibility as councillors to carefully steward not just the money of the ratepayers, but all of our resources. So by investing in this industry, by making it a part of Ballarat, we not only give back to the ratepayers in the form of cheaper energy and more jobs, but we're stewarding our resources in responsible ways. And so it's not just, it's everybody's responsibility as individuals to look after the environment, but it's council's responsibility to champion that and to be a leader in that and to be an example to other cities for how to do it.
Beautiful, thank you. And that was under time, and I appreciate that. Fantastic. Okay, so next, Tracy, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, that'd be great if you don't mind, Tony.
Okay, so just briefly introduce yourself and then answer, what is your role as a councillor for addressing climate change, and what measures would you introduce and support to tackle climate change? Thanks, Tracy.
Okay. So yeah, for anyone who isn't aware of who I am yet, I am Tracdey Hargreaves. I am a first-time candidate running in the South. And so I suppose from an individual place, what I do, I've kind of looked at climate change and done the best that I can as an individual and as a family and as a business owner to really produce as little waste as possible, to, you know, use as little power as possible. We've done all the things in our house with solar panels and all of that sort of thing. But as for a role as a councillor, I suppose I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball because there's so much to get your head around, and this is one space that I don't have a ton of experience in managing from that next level up. But from the reading I've done, I think it's all about, as Bridget mentioned, you know, trying to encourage as much renewable energy and encourage that consultation with industries within Ballarat so that we can enable, you know, that next level of really big energy users, I guess, to go through that same path. Yeah, I'm doing my best, but it's not an area that I'm super confident in saying that I would be able to advise. Yeah.
That's fine, Tracy. Perhaps you could just tell us how you personally and publicly responded to the challenges of climate change.
Yeah, well, look, it's a funny one because I had done my very best over all the years coming up to this to make my business as low waste as possible. So we don't use anything, even our cleaning products are green. We don't have disposable anything. We don't offer bottled water. We're doing all of those sort of things. We're looking at getting solar panels on the roof of the studio. But COVID's really sort of thrown a spanner in the works because a lot of not the energy so much, we haven't even been in the studio to use any, but the disposable nature of things really worries me. And some of the protocols around, you know, COVID and cleaning and all that sort of thing have really changed. So, I mean, from a personal perspective as well, I'd love to see the next step of the batteries that can store power in houses and businesses taken from solar panels. I mean, I've looked into it, but it doesn't seem to be something that's moving very quickly. And I think that would really enable a lot of us to do better.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. Well, you're under time, so that's perfect.
Great.
Love it. Okay, so I'll just cancel the spotlight view. All right, Des Hudson. Des.
Thank you, Tony, for the opportunity to present tonight. And I guess by way of introduction, 18 years as a councillor with the City of Ballarat and a term as former mayor. I guess in terms of answering your question, that the new Local Government Act will require that council takes a lead role and an active role in terms of addressing climate change and sustainability. So where previously different councillors and Councillor Belinda Coates, who's been a long advocate and pushed really hard in this space, but this is a requirement of councils across Victoria into the future. Just want to talk briefly, in 2015, I had an opportunity to go to Finland, that is often seen as a leader in terms of sustainability, and linking in with an organisation called VTT, and was looking at their resource recovery model and waste to energy. That is something that I guess looking at them as potential leaders, resource recovery and recyclables to the tune of about 90% of all of their garbage that people are doing away with from their individual households. Met with the Mayor of Lahti, which is about the same distance it is from Helsinki as what Ballarat is from Melbourne, and seen their waste to energy facility and how it can power the entire city. It provides them as a local government an ability for them to be the providing of power for their entire community. Now, their local government model is a bit different to what we have in Victoria. The Mayor of Lahti presides over health and infrastructure and education, so very, very different to the space that we're in. But I was super impressed in terms of what they've been able to achieve, and brought that information back and had future discussions in Canberra in terms of Ballarat potentially being a pilot site for a resource recovery and I guess able to power a similar model from Ballarat, a waste to energy resource facility. I think that in the last 4 years, there's been a real void from both state and federal governments in terms of what's being provided in that space, and being able to provide funds for that to be strengthened. That to me is a disappointment, because Ballarat had been talking about waste to energy facilities for at least the last 10 years. And we've really got nowhere, but it's because the fact we can't afford to do it on our own, I don't believe, and we should be looking for state and federal funds to be able to assist us in that space. So I think we're ready to go, but we will need some buy-in from the state and federal level. And when they've developed that policy position, I think we can advocate strongly for support in that space.
Awesome. Thanks, Des. Appreciate that. I'll just turn the spotlight off. So, Jim Rinaldi, could you tell us just a bit about yourself, and also what is your role as a councillor for addressing climate change, and what measures you would introduce and support to tackle climate change? Are you there, Jim? I'll just ask to unmute. All right, well, we can come back to you, Jim. Let's just jump to Jackson. Jackson.
Yes, hi Tony, how's it going?
Awesome, so go for it.
All right, so real quick bit of background. So I grew up just north of here on my family's farm, yeah, just outside of town in Newstead. And so by way of context, growing up on the land, I was able to see the effects of climate change firsthand on our family farm and vineyard. So, you know, you can really see the impact of it there. And in relation to the question itself about my role, you know, if elected, for tackling climate change, I think there's a lot that we can do in Ballarat. I really do. I think the council has a huge responsibility, as do all levels of government, you know, large and small. So here in Ballarat, we can do lots in terms of changing, you know, households and solar on roofs and things like that. We can have incentive programs. We can, I don't think it should just be limited to council facilities, for example, as it is currently in our 100% renewable action plan. I think we can really expand what we do here in Ballarat. We could have a net zero target for the whole city, not just for council itself. So I think there's real room here for ambition, on climate. There's no reason why Ballarat should hold back. We're a medium-sized city. We're big enough to tackle some of these climate-related projects and have better recycling, for example, things like that. Whereas, a larger city like Melbourne might find it a bit challenging or more cumbersome. So we have a bit of agility there. So I do think that Ballarat has a real opportunity in that regard. We can show leadership in all sorts of things. Council would have investments in electric vehicles, for example, and while that might not be a huge impact on the climate itself through the emissions reduced, I still think it's a great way of showing leadership, of demonstrating to people that we're taking a step forward, we can make change, and it can be done. I think things like that. Some things are more symbolic, and some things are more making real change. So I think a mix of both of those will be the way forward for Ballarat. How am I doing for time, Tony? Is that about enough?
Yes. Well, you got about another 30 seconds. So if you want.
30 seconds is fine.
No, that's great. No, please. That's good, because we've got a lot of questions to get through. So thank you. Thanks, nice. Jackson. All right. So now we'll jump to Northwood, and just the way the VEC had the candidates. So it's Alan Burns. So if Alan is there.
Sure, I'm here.
Cool. So I'll hand it to you. So 3 minutes, please.
Sure, great. Well, I have a lot to talk about on this topic. Obviously, the last week, especially, Belinda, Jackson and I have been getting really specific on our climate plans for the future of Ballarat. So Belinda has done amazing things in the last 8 years and been able to get the current council to commit to a 100% renewables and carbon neutrality action plan. So what we want to see is actually stepping further than that. We want to see a carbon neutrality target for the whole city, for community-wide. And we have a whole range of things that we want to see to be able to make that happen. And we've outlined them in the last week, but just to quickly mention some, we have a plan for no upfront solar cost, and that's going to be repayable through rates and interest-free loans, and as well as a per capita active transport spend, which already exists in other cities. And I should also mention, people might think that a community-wide carbon neutrality target is really ambitious, but it's actually already been done by other councils. City of Melbourne is 100% carbon-free, and that's come ahead of schedule. So there are other people that are doing it, and there's no reason why Ballarat can't be doing it as well. Ballarat has been a little bit behind in this area, and we don't really have any excuse for that, because we are a regional hub. We should be leading the way for the rest of the state. So yeah, there's a bunch of other things that I personally would like to see as well. The canopy coverage raising to 40%. That plan is spanned over 20 years, which I think is just way too long, and I think we can hopefully bring that forward, and also advocate for a better public transport and a lot of other things. Have I listed enough? I could go on, but
thank you. Thanks, Alan. That was perfect. So Peter.
Thanks, Tony, for that, and for the opportunity tonight. I just a little bit about myself. I'm a first-time candidate for council. I've recently stepped down and finished my career in sports management, and I've committed to pursuing council as something that I think is another great investment in our community going forward. I think, and I agree with what most of the speakers have said tonight, but I certainly think that just perhaps before we get to that stage, there is a real need for our council to take stock and reassess where we're at. And I think just the scope and the strength of our governance and the strength of consultation with our community, and then the strength of putting things into action is critical before we move forward. And whether that's with the environment and with an action plan in this case, or whether it's in a whole range of other strategies, I think it's really vital that we actually get the pillars right before we move forward. Just thinking when I was doing the survey for BREAZE recently, it does make you think back to how subtle education over time makes you understand and commit to the fact that we are in a climate emergency and we need to be very positive and proactive in this space. And some of the things from a workspace that probably come to mind for me as CEO, simple things like harvesting our rainwater. I mean, obviously when you've got 4 basketball courts, you've got a lot of water. And we harvested 2 courts there to actually recycle through our own facility and to reuse that water. The other 2 we gave to Webconnor Bowls Club next door so that they could store in underground tanks and then water their greens and those sort of things. So just that capacity to maximise our opportunity to use things. Last year, we actually went a step forward with our facility and we installed 360 solar panels on the roof. And that's certainly been a significant step forward for us in I suppose just being able to show that commitment and what we want to do, right down to the simple things of putting in water fountains with Central Highlands water for drink bottles or for kids to drink. So we are getting them back to water rather than buying a lot of Powerade or whatever else it might be, and then getting into the issue of having to manage waste and recycling. Personally, I think I'm committed to the same things in terms of our home environment. We don't use a freezer, all the simple things that I would think we should be able to do. I think one of the things that perhaps I haven't heard tonight that I am really keen on is making sure that we get an education. And I know that there is a lot said around the climate and the environment, but making sure we get some really positive education around that. And I think a great example just this week, and I'm not sure whether anyone saw Australian Story Monday night with Charles Massey, but talking on regenerative farming and just him going into a room full of farmers who are obviously opposed, largely a lot might not agree with his views, but to see the method and the way in which he promoted the capacity of saving the land, protecting it, making good commercial decisions as well as environmental decisions. And I think that's where we've got to get to, the balance of actually creating jobs, maintaining jobs, and looking after the environment. If we can bring everyone together on the same page, from the local householder to the biggest business, I think that's a real step forward. I think some of the things that I'd like to really, on council, I think the all waste interchange, some of the critical things that are big ticket items, and we do have to work hard to get money into the town, but we need some of these projects. We need to be able to get into a space where we're looking at trying to be a leader in what we do and actually putting ourselves forward so that if there's a chance with that to actually improve our city, to actually reduce the amount of waste going to landfill, I think they're the sort of things we should do. I think also the integrated transport plan, I think Jackson might have said before, some of these are small steps, but they're all great steps because if everyone works together, I think we've got a far better chance rather than it being an alienated environment where, we're trying to fight against each other too much. I'd like to see us look at the possibility.
Peter, you've got 10 more seconds.
Thanks for that. I think the other thing that I really want to do is just probably make that message that council needs to drive this agenda, it needs to lead, and it needs to actually do so in creating jobs, building things that are sustainable for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. So, Bryn?
Thanks very much, Tony. And thank you to BREAZE too for the invitation to come and be part of the panel tonight. Thank you to all the other candidates for turning up. As well, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to all elders past and present. As Tony said, my name is Bryn Hills and I am the Animal Justice Party endorsed candidate for North Ward in the Ballarat Council elections. I've sought the endorsement of the party because I share the party's values. The Animal Justice Party is a values-based party and its core values are kindness, equality, rationality, and non-violence. Personally, I'm a teacher. I've been in state education for 26 years, presently at Ballarat High School. The climate emergency, it's called, it's aptly named an emergency. And we have a small window of time in which to address the problems that it is throwing at us. We know the scientists tell us that the principal drivers are fossil fuels, land clearing, and animal agriculture. So we have to think about ways that we can, from the local level, address these arguments to people so that we can make real change. And how do we do this on a local level? We know from the research from Beyond Zero Emissions that over the next 20 years, animal agriculture will be the leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions in Australia. So food choices, the Oxford University researchers have found that simply by taking meat, animal products out of your diet, you can reduce your carbon footprint by 75%, 3/4. So a really simple thing. No animal products, your footprint comes down by 3/4, 75%. This is massive. Right now, I realize that, you know, in the real world here that that's not going to happen overnight. It is happening around the world. 70% of the world's population is choosing to do just that. Commerce Ballarat, the Plantapalooza festival this weekend is featuring vegan and vegetarian food across many eateries across Ballarat. And that is a wonderful initiative. So what can council do in terms of really showing leadership in this regard? So as I said, you know, I'm not here to try and put anyone out of business or change, you know, ruin anyone's livelihood or anything like that, but I'm here to offer maybe some suggestions that maybe council could take on board some of these things that could really drastically reduce our carbon footprint. Maybe council events could be plant-based. Maybe council could sponsor more food festivals like the Plantapalooza festival that feature plant-based foods. Perhaps council could show greater leadership in saying to people that, you know, by these simple choices, really simple choices, we can really have a concerted attack against climate change.
Thanks, Bryn. That's time. Thank you.
I was just going to say one last thing, and everyone should eat more vegetables.
Good. Perfect.
Because the research tells us that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Bryn. So Dan?
Sorry, was that me?
Yeah, sorry, Daniel Moloney.
My apologies, no worries. And there's actually, you'll see tonight, there's two Daniel Moloney. So Grant's also popped up as Daniel Moloney, and it's on the screen as well. So I'm sharing my link. I'm not trying to get 2 votes, but if you want to vote for me twice, that's okay. Now, look, I guess there's plenty of things that we can do from a council perspective that we do need to be conscious of. And you know, we've got the ability, I guess, to not only, as others have said, get out and reach a big part of our population through our various communication channels and outline some of the benefits of acting responsibly, but we've also got 700 buildings that range from toilet blocks to Mars Stadium, Town Hall, so big and large buildings where, again, there's various bits of work, as well as you know, solar panels that we can introduce to a range of our facilities that can ensure that overall council moves toward a more sustainable model. And much of this has been identified in the carbon neutrality plan that, you know, really happy to support and back nice and early in the council term. I think that's key. Council can also do a lot of work in not only sort of promoting you know, better recycling, but also making better use of our recycling too. I'm really huge on making sure that we do a lot more work in terms of better footpaths and better cycling infrastructure. And you know, things such as the glass that we recycle can be used as the base for some of these works. And you know, I am absolutely staggered by how ridiculously political and stupid the carry-on was around the bike paths that we're seeing or been talking about in our city. You know, you'd think that you know, we're trying to sort of sell someone's firstborn child or something with the carry-on over the bike path down Sturt Street. Crikey, what a ridiculous notion that was. It has turned out to be fantastic. I love it. It's going to be well used. We need to see so much more of it, because it's also our job as councillors and as leaders of the city to be encouraging alternate forms of transport. And you can only do that when the infrastructure is there. So to see some people carry on in such a ridiculous way, I think was way out of line. Hey, part of, I think, the discussion really, I think, centres around not only us explaining the broader, excuse me, the broader environmental benefits, but also many of the economic and social benefits that come as well too. So yes, much of what we can do will have a long-lasting impression on reducing our overall carbon footprint. But it also has some massive social benefits too, through walking and cycling infrastructure, getting people out and about and active more, healthier for us. And often too, as I said, it's economically responsible too. So we have opportunities to significantly reduce and be more efficient with our budgets. So yeah, hopefully that's getting close to my 2 minutes.
Perfect. No, thank you. So we'll go Jay Morrison, and then after that, I'll go back to Jim. So hopefully you'll be ready. So Jay, take it away. You there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Tony. And thank you for BREAZE for putting this on tonight. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Jay Morrison. I live in Ballarat North with my partner in our first home. I actually grew up in a small town. I've moved and lived all around rural and regional Victoria, but I grew up in a small town predominantly called Malakuta, which is a beautiful place in Crowe-Jinlong National Park. I think council's role when it comes to championing this issue is not just about leadership. That's an important part of it. Leadership, attracting investment, I think is really important in industries like manufacturing, renewables, making sure that current industries have the support they need to transition as well to renewable energy. But it's not just those things, it's also about bringing the community together and bringing the community with us with these sorts of plans. And I think it's very important that whoever the next council is, that they do work together to ensure that that occurs. I think that's really critical, that the next council do focus on making sure that we bring the community with us, because as everybody's sort of, who's already spoken has kind of outlined, there's actually a lot of great economic and social benefits here that are a real positive for the community. I'm passionate about jobs. I'm a union organiser by trade, and I do feel very strongly about the fact that pursuing an agenda to tackle climate change actually means growth in that area. The climate change, the Climate Council's jobs plan, the million jobs plan as well, 2 different jobs plans, are great models that council can pursue. It's not just about focusing on individual responsibility here. There's a major untapped markets here for investment, essentially, and that means more local secure jobs, which is something that in these times we really need more of. I also think with council, they need to be thinking forward in how they do their development. I'm pretty passionate about sustainable development myself. You know, my dream house one day that I will build somewhere will be a passive house. You know, solar passive house. I'm pretty educated and I love reading about this stuff. I do think that there is an opportunity for, there are already councils out there and models out there for sustainable development, like the Cape, which is in the east of Victoria. Port Fairy has just announced a sustainable development themselves down there, which will be fantastic. These things are being done around Victoria and around Australia, and council should be looking towards these sorts of opportunities as well. So for me, you know, wrapping up just quickly, I think it's about making sure that we do attract investment that brings jobs. I think it's about not only bringing the community along with us, you know, but it's about getting them together and making sure that the community is driving this. And it's about making sure that we do sustainable development really well.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate that. Okay, Jim, are you ready?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that earlier. I couldn't get on, so now I'm right.
There you are. Okay, take it away, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for having this session with BREAZE as well. It's a very good opportunity. But first, I'd like to pay my respects to the custodians of land, the water, and people of the Kulin Nation, on whose land we meet, and I pay respects to the elders, both past and present. Just quickly, just for those, I'll just let you know that I am a totally self-funded candidate. I have never been involved or a member of any political party. I've ran my own businesses for probably close to, well over 20 years, closer to 27 years. So I do understand business. I know how they work. I know how to look at a business and see what the issues are, then make adjustments as we move forward. The reason I'm saying that, because we are in a difficult time. We are going to come out of a difficult time. We will come out of it, of course we will. And the catch cry is more businesses for Ballarat. I say, look after the businesses we have got. First of all, when we are buying something, let's buy local from our local distributors or manufacturers here. Those who have got businesses, support them continually, whether it's you're looking at a vehicle, just for instance, or your food products or things that you're going to buy online. Please make sure that it can be serviced or produced or bought in our city to help the businesses, because we help them, they'll generate more income, and then they will employ more people. I was at a service station this morning. They're down about $15,000 in fuel sales in a week, like a big business. That's massive. So therefore, employment for those, they have to have people coming into their store to buy the goods they've got in the store. Talking about the environment and the city of Ballarat, I'll just quickly talk about what we do already. For instance, the rubbish trucks that run around our city, they're all on the best routes possible to save time and fuel. So they zigzag through the city, but they're not doubling up, going over the same road. So that's just a small one, but it is a major issue. We talk about the bike paths and trails and so forth. We have brilliant trails and walking tracks and shared paths in our city. What we do need, though, is more signage and the continuation of those trails, say from CBD up through Wendouree, whether it's up near the railway line or along the railway line, somewhere that would be a great advantage to our city. And also we've got the rail trails that we talked about, or someone talked about transport. Our transport is just a debacle in our city. I've said that since day one when they reconstructed the bus routes from a computer in Melbourne.
10 seconds, Jim.
Yep. Okay, well, I'll finish at that, and very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, Belinda, are you there?
Yes, I am. I wasn't expecting to come on so soon, though.
Oh, sorry, sir. I'm on Central Ward now. So.
Oh, okay, great. Yep.
You ready?
Good to go. Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
thanks, Tony. And I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and pay respect to their elders, past and present, and acknowledge all First Nations peoples. And just to introduce myself for people who don't know me, I'm currently the Deputy Mayor, and I've been a councillor for 8 years. City of Ballarat, Ballarat's first Greens endorsed councillor, and I've been a climate campaigner for about 15 years. I'm also a social worker, so I've worked locally in the social work field for over 20 years. So I come at climate change action from a social justice point of view as well, because I've learned over the years that social justice is very linked to climate and environmental justice. So I'm really pleased to see the changes that have happened in recent years. As I said, coming from the perspective of being a climate campaigner for 15 years, it is very good to see so many councils leading on action on climate change. And so it was high on my agenda when I was first elected in 2012 to get support for action on climate change. Unfortunately, I did meet a little bit of resistance early on, and I managed to gain support for environmental and climate actions within the Ballarat strategy to build on. So initially it was like the urban forest plan, a sustainable transport plan, were some of the things that I advocated for really early on from the start. In council, also getting a renewable energy plan into the Ballarat strategy. In my second term of council, that provided a good platform to work with in advocating to my councillor colleagues. Again, they weren't initially especially receptive, but after some hard work and support from the community and lobbying from the community, eventually there was majority support to set an ambitious target for carbon neutrality and 100% renewables action plan. And also we did get majority support for a climate emergency acknowledgement. So I think it is great that now the state government has legislated within the Local Government Act that action on climate change is a requirement. And that's where the mandate sits. We also know on top of that, that a majority of people in the community, and it ranges roughly between 80 and 90% of people who acknowledge that urgent action on climate change is needed. So acknowledging that there's a climate emergency and biodiversity emergency does really mean that there's a lot of pressure to step up actions within the carbon neutrality plan. And there are a lot of things that can be done that have multiple benefits for the whole community. So they have social benefits, they have health and wellbeing benefits, and they also have economic and job creation benefits as well. So things like moving rapidly to a circular economy, assisting with infrastructure for walking and cycling,
Thanks,
and
Belinda.
regenerative.
That's time.
Yep, all
So
done. That's okay.
Talk more later.
All done.
Okay, thank you. So, John Dooley, are you here?
I am.
Your sign is directly outside my house, so every time I open my door, I see your face. So, if you can,
is that a good thing?
Yeah, we'll see. But if you can make your video so we can see you. Hang on, one second.
I push share video and I've got the mic on.
There we go. Okay.
We're all there?
All there.
Thank you. So, yeah, John Dooley, someone who's recently settled in Ballarat 3.5 years ago with my wife. We're here to enjoy originally the affordable housing and the wonderful 10-minute city, and we're wanting to do more within Ballarat and be more community focused. So that's the reason I'm standing for council. As far as the question at hand, what do I do for climate change? Well, climate change is real, and I know that, and I've understood that from a long time ago, and I think my mother even did when she used other terms for it. But as far as what we do here, it's as a household, there's a number of things we all do. And if Bryn's still listening, I'm having vegetarian quesadilla at the moment. But there's a real issue that we're unable to do anything better with our recycling. And I must bring up the glass recycling issue because it is a... reality is we can recycle it, and I heard one of the other candidates or councillors mention the benefit of using that in road base and in that type of preparation. And of course, when we try our best to repair many roads in Ballarat, maybe we need to get some glass-based product to put in there. I'm fortunate enough to work in the supply business for electrical wholesale, and I'm very well versed in renewable energies in the wind farm sector. Spend most days out on one of the farms around Ballarat, and I've learned so much about the reality of the commercial business in that area. So I feel that how we can do better in the city is to look at embracing the fact that wind, excepting for about 5 or 6 days a year, is our friend in Ballarat, and we should be harnessing that. I feel that the BWIS is just a fantastic area where we could set up. It's, you know, it's what we call a greenfield site where we could set up to put a lot of these renewable generation strategies into place. The reality of the solar power plant being utilised by one of our big businesses is evidence of the fact that the sun shines too. So I feel that when we're doing what we call sustainable planning, I want to look at it from the areas that I have more intimate knowledge. Now, there's so much lighting that's used around Ballarat, and it's a very hot topic. You know, you've got the dark, someone will help me there, but the dark group, which is the people who talk about the fact that we have so much lighting going up in the sky and wasted energy. Well, we have so many different opportunities to use solar powered lighting, particularly in public lighting and street lighting. And when this is not totally necessary at high rates of light, solar lighting, of course, is designed to switch down to lower capacities and then only illuminate back up when there's a need for it. So I would be pushing very hard that if we're doing any street lighting or any lighting such.
That's time, John.
Okay.
And it's the Ballarat Dark Sky community. I think.
Okay. Apologies to the Dark Sky community.
That's I think they're watching too.
There's a way.
So Mark Harris, are you here?
Yes, Tony.
Cool, great. If you could speak to the
No worries, thank you. And I'd also like to pay my respects to the Wadawurrung and the Judgerwong traditional custodians of this land. Look, the reality, I guess personally, I do try to live fairly simply, and like Belinda, I commute to work on a bike. We compost, recycle, and as I said, live a fairly simple lifestyle, I would have thought. On the broader context, I'm work in the health. I work as an emergency room doctor. I work in the health sector, and I've been a counsellor in this last term, and then a couple of cycles ago, also on council. I was a supporter of our carbon neutrality policy. It's still got some work, and I do sometimes worry about some of our own metrics. Metrics are the important thing here, and while council lights a lot of lights, and manages waste. It's not a smelter either, so our report card needs constant vigilance in terms of neutrality, and we probably do need to do a carbon neutral model, and we do need to have metrics for comparison. As far as the citywide carbon neutrality, I'm a supporter, and again, we do need sensible metrics that we can use and guide our community through it, and we'll be a better place, a better sustainable place for it. And I am pleased too, the Local Government Act is going to make us, I guess, more responsible in that sector, and our community rightly would expect us to do more. In broad context, I guess waste to energy, I still have some concerns. I'm not sure if incineration is the answer. I share particularly Councillor Hudson's issues with the lack of policy in this area from state government has made it difficult. We certainly need waste interchange. This is absolutely vital, regardless of how we go. But we do need the circular waste economy, again, with proper economy around it, actual fiscals and actual metrics, so that we can work in it. So we look to state government, and we must have a huge advocacy to make sure that that works. Locally, there is a lot of advocacy work. I mean, we are a relatively energy dense region now in terms of renewables. Whether or not we've got the access to be able to push that into hydrogen, I'm not sure. But it's something we've got to look at fairly hard. And similarly, like Bridget, have got some interest and some concerns, I guess, about what the grid should look for us. I don't necessarily think that the transmission dynamics as they exist are the best for us. And I think we could probably do better locally and should start to think locally in those terms. We also have to help our state and federal colleagues in terms of climate policy, and our advocacy should be strong and robust there, and perhaps looking to, in fact, help them with it. I have been disappointed with federal policy, particularly over last couple of weeks.
Mark, thank you. That's time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Appreciate that. So we'll go to Geoff Howard. I'll just get you up.
Look, I used to be a science teacher, came to Ballarat as a science teacher, and I guess I started trying to educate people on the needs to recognise our special environment from the day I started teaching. And of course, I've moved on from there and have been involved 3 terms on council back in the 90s. And as a state MP, I was Parliamentary Secretary for the Environment under the Bracks government, and have had right through my life a great concern about how we need to listen to our scientists. They've been telling us for well over 40 years that we need to recognise that we can't keep putting out carbon into the atmosphere the way we have. And I've been pretty depressed, I suppose, at different times when I've seen not enough leadership at all levels of government over a long period of time. And political opportunism, the acts of troglodytes just hasn't helped us. And so what we really do need is good leadership, and that does need to happen at all levels. And as an educationalist, I think that means that you need to say, this is what the scientists are telling us. You need to educate the community that we need to invest in our future, not hide from the facts. And there are so many opportunities out there that will reap benefits. We've heard Bridget talking about jobs opportunities in the environmental area and climate sustainability area. We've seen that so many of the new clean energy technologies are rurally centred, and so we stand to gain so much from that. Also, one of the reasons I'm standing for council this time, I do get depressed even when I look at our new housing developments. So we haven't learnt a lot in a lot of years. While we are putting solar panels on roofing, we're still not designing our houses to recognise that we can use passive technologies so well and take advantage of that. And when I was on council back in the 90s, I do remember we went for a visit to Melbourne to look at new housing developments that recognised that developers didn't have to have straight streets and houses all in rows, that we could do these modern thoughts in technology and design of houses and design of housing subdivisions, and yet we simply haven't developed and moved along in a long period of time. So I want to see that happen. I want to see us getting really serious about all of the options, looking at what other communities across Australia are doing. I did go to Europe a number of years ago and saw that the European community is so far ahead of us in so many ways. We've just got to learn from those around us, get serious, and really ensure that the future Australians of this country have a future to look forward to with a good, sound environment that's safe for them.
Thank you. Thank you, Geoff. That was dead on 3 minutes there, so well trained. Kumuda.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Tony, and thanks to BREAZE for organising this. I want to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land here as well, the Wadawurrung and the Dja Dja Wurrung people. Bit about me, I'm very new to all of this. It's the first time I've ever run for public office. I have an academic background. I worked for more than 10 years as an academic teaching politics. And for the last 5 years, specifically researching climate change and the impacts on local communities, particularly around conflict. So I looked at areas, particularly in sort of Northern Africa and parts of the Middle East as well. Now I work, since December, I've been working as a senior policy advisor in natural resource management. I work with traditional owners across the state to around water policy, specifically water, but also biodiversity policy. And I guess for me, and look, everyone here tonight has said, I agree with pretty much everything people have been saying. I think there's some really fantastic ideas in here, and I guess the one thing I would add to all of the great ideas is that I think council needs a comprehensive climate adaptation plan. So as well as a mitigation plan, we need to, and you know, a few people have mentioned that under the Local Government Act, we are now required to act on climate change and to consider it in all of our policy. So we actually need an adaptation plan that looks at things like food security. It needs to look at health and well-being. Climate change primarily impacts people's health. It impacts their jobs and livelihoods. It impacts our food security. It impacts our water security. I think the modelling shows that in Victoria, by 2050, there's going to be 50% less water in our catchments. So how is a city like Ballarat that sits at the sort of centre of 3 different catchments, you know, how do we plan for that long-term water security so that we can, you know, continue to support our farmers to grow our food and to do that in a sustainable way? How are we going to make sure that when we have heat waves that our most vulnerable residents are actually looked after and protected? The things like tree canopy cover. So I know Ellen mentioned that, you know, that's an essential part that we can actually start to provide some kind of benefits for our community. It reduces ambient temperature by a significant amount. I guess also in terms of planning, you know, how do we look at the built environment and make sure that we are embedding those principles and climate mitigation into all of our planning, and you know, when we look at all of those big developments that are going on in the outskirts of Ballarat, you know, looking at our emergency response plans. So, you know, what are we doing to protect those communities when there are grass fires? I think kind of one of the things that I would really hope to bring to this is a sort of a systems thinking approach. You know, how do all of these different bits of policy that council does have some control over, how can we leverage all of those things and make sure that we're kind of embedding these climate principles into all of these different areas, not just focusing on one specific issue, but thinking holistically about how we manage for the community.
Great, thank you so much, Kumuda. Appreciate that. Okay, so now just because we're running out of time, we'll do the round robin, like just very brief answers to questions that were emailed in earlier and also that have been posted. And I'll just go through the same order that we had the last questions. So I'll just go to the first one, which would be to Bridget. So what actions would you implement to tackle a biodiversity emergency at a local level? And that's from Holly, Ballarat North.
What a great question. One of the things that we've lost is traditional knowledge from our Indigenous people. And I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge them as custodians of the land that we're on. I got so surprised by being first up that I missed that, and I apologize. But they have, our traditional owners of the land, our Indigenous community have amazing knowledge for biodiversity and for land management. And we've largely ignored that to our peril. And I think the fires this year were a case in point. My understanding is that there is someone in each Indigenous community that's the keeper of fire, that understands how to manage it and work with it, and we don't listen. As far as biodiversity in other ways goes, we have to be really careful to steward those resources, to protect from external forces and imported pests that can create problems, but also to get back to farming practices that renew the soil and renew the land. I remember reading a report that said it's not far off before our land won't produce food anymore because of the nutrient depletion in the soils. And more work needs to be done around that to look at that. I know some of the ancient practices were about how you co-locate things and how you leave land fallow and how you rotate crops. I mean, that's not an ancient practice.
Thanks, Bridget. That's a minute. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Tracy, are you there?
Yep. Thanks.
So I've got a question from Helen Lewis. She says, how urgent do you think action on climate change is? So 1 minute, please.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, we've just heard from all of the different candidates, so many different factions to do with climate change or related to climate change. And I think you know, the word emergency is there for a reason, because we can't ignore anymore. It's kind of been in our faces, you know, even through the bushfires of last year, and you know, the extinction that we're seeing. So many animals are lost on a daily basis at the moment. And so, I mean, I don't think it's something that you can exaggerate. And I also don't, it worries me that the younger generations seem to be stepping up a lot more than people kind of our age and older in a lot of respects. So I think it really is up to us, you know, to take action and to take meaningful action and plan so that they are left with a planet that is, you know, in better shape than it is right now, I think.
Perfect. Thank you. Good timing. So, Des?
Yes, Tony?
So how do you think the city should be engaging with a community in developing a plan to rapidly transition to a decarbonised economy?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. And I guess it falls under that aspect of climate action being mandated by the state governments as part of our action going forward. Clearly what we need, and others have spoken about, is that community consultation, getting the community to understand what it is we as a city are talking about and what we want to see the direction that we go. I think there are enough challenges in council that we try to be all things to everyone at times, but it is about biting off the bits that how far can we come in the life of the next 4-year term of council to get greater understanding of our community and the direction we want to head. If we truly want them on board with us, it is about developing this conversation across our community.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, and I've just realised, Grant, that you're there. Can you answer that first question, if you want? So, do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
So, just if you could answer it in 2 minutes, what is your role as councillor for addressing climate change? What measures would you introduce and support to tackle climate change?
Well, you've had a range of advices from people tonight, some of whom have academic backgrounds and who are really skilled in this field. I'm an old farmer, so I'm probably one of the foes of the climate change organisations, but without any question, since I was a child, I have observed climate change occurring and can have first-hand experience in the 1940s of 10-year droughts, dust storms that turn day into night, and I therefore have a slightly different view to some of the younger ones who've probably never experienced those phenomena. With the City of Ballarat, as a councillor, I'm speaking as a retiring councillor, candidate for the next election. But we have to take account of what the city can do, physically can do, in trying to assist with this problem. COVID has caused a major problem because it will have impacted. We don't know yet how much it has impacted the budgets of the council. And that will impact on our ability to do all sorts of things, including, I suspect, some of this work. I acknowledge Belinda's work in relation to obtaining the 100% renewables program. It was spread over a period of time as much because of the cost of it as because of the need for time to implement the changes. So you can't implement the changes that we're talking about without really paying attention to the budgets associated with council. And council budgets, by and large, are set 10 years in advance. So this hiccup from COVID is going to cause a really big problem. We will work together. Council, irrespective of who's on the council will work together. There's a bit of a furphy around that.
Grant, that's time.
Oh, okay, right.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll come back to you for the round robin. Appreciate that.
Tony, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you. And so back to Jackson. Given we have been told that Ballarat will grow exponentially in the next 2 decades, given residential housing is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, what can the council do to drive more ecologically sustainable design? So 1 minute.
Thanks, Tony. That is a great question, and that is actually something which we being the Greens, have come out with last week. So we are hoping to make a couple of new policies if one or more of us is elected, to have more solar panels on houses. So on new housing developments, we could change the planning requirements. So we might need to require solar panels to go on there, and changing the environmentally sustainable design requirements so that houses have to be built to a higher standard to ensure that a higher star rating is achieved. So things like that, for example, other design features could be employed through council policy so that we can make a real change to how houses are built in Ballarat.
Great, thanks, Jackson.
Right, pleasure.
So, Ellen Burns. So, I've got a question from Breeze. The Ballarat's CO2 from transport equates to 451,000 tonnes. How should the council assist the community in reducing transport emissions across the city?
Yeah, great question. In the current carbon neutrality action plan that Belinda's got through, it addresses the council portion of that. So transition of the council fleet vehicles to electric vehicles. And obviously public transport is a state issue, and that's where council advocacy comes in. We do need more train stations and better public transport around Ballarat. I don't think anyone is arguing that. The closest bus stop to my house is a 20-minute walk, so it's not viable for me to catch public transport. I personally offset the carbon emissions from my car through the local group 15 Trees. So it is possible for people to do things like that. We're becoming a bit of a hub for electric vehicles. We've got, I think, 3, potentially more charging stations in Ballarat. So I know of people, friends in Melbourne that are lucky enough to have Teslas or access to Teslas that have been on road trips through Ballarat because we have charging stations. But obviously, a lot of that is not in council jurisdiction. It's in state or in private sectors. But I think just encouraging people to make that change either to offsetting or electric vehicles, and
thanks, Ellen.
Doing what we can with the council fleet.
Appreciate that. Okay, Peter?
Yes, yep.
So we got a question from Nikki and John Petheram. They ask, do you use local buses, and what would you do about improving the dreadful bus services in Ballarat? Will you push for smaller, more regular buses that cover a wider area than at the present, as in other Southeast Asian countries? Thanks. 1 minute.
Well, the answer is no. I haven't been using local buses at this point in time. I'm close enough to either walk to work or if I've got meetings to drive to work. But we've chosen to live in Ballarat North where we live because we are at a bus stop at the corner, and it takes us anywhere we want to go, and we're fortunate to have that capacity. I think the big thing with our bus transport, and from a sports background, seeing kids in Ballarat South not be able to get to Windaree to participate in indoor sports has been something that's been going on for 15, 20 years. So there is a lot of work to do on the network, and I think I'm not familiar with the capacity to go for the smaller buses or the economics of that, but I certainly think that has a lot of merit and something I would look at favourably.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that. Bryn?
Yep.
I've got a question from the Ballarat Dark Sky community. They said, would you be willing to support looking at housing and infrastructure developments in a totally new way, encompassing the best ideas from around the world and creating an eco blueprint for the future?
Absolutely is my first response to that. I suppose this speaks to the question of biodiversity, really, because we know that an influx of light or an excess of light really plays havoc with our wildlife. In terms of their migration, in terms of their sleep habits, in terms of their mating habits, in terms of their movement, in a whole lot of regards. And if you think this biodiversity stuff, if you think it's just, you know, some possums in your backyard, then I think everyone needs to think again, because it is crucially important. And I mean, you really only have to look as far as the current pandemic. It's widely accepted. It was in the Courier last week. The chief veterinary officer from Victoria, now retired, was talking about the fact that our broken relationship with the animal world has resulted in a 60 to 70% increase in zoonotic diseases. We've just recently seen the avian flu in our neighbouring shire of the Golden Plains Shire. So I think that, you know, so the dark sky is one element, but there's different elements as well in creating habitat. Yes.
Sorry, time. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, sorry, you had me on a roll there.
You were. Daniel?
Yeah.
So what should the council be doing to protect koala habitat?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, it all comes down to where we're putting houses to start with, and I think that's very important. So I know a big part of the issue is predominantly throughout South Ward, which is not my ward, but beside the point, there's still significant koala habitat throughout North Ward, because it's one of those huge wards that cover so much of both city and regional of the city. It's about making sure, I guess, that our housing sections are not really encroaching, really, I think, upon on significant koala wildlife. I think that's the key thing, really. And also making sure, too, that in those areas of significant wildlife as well, that we're being quite clear on our domestic animal restrictions as well, too. So we have some significant issues in some parts of the city with dogs and wild dogs, and that'll also be, I think, an element too. Probably going well under.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay, Jay?
Yes.
So we'll go to Matt's question in the Q&A. He said, how do you view the council's role with regard to providing space for bike riders on the road? And what do you think the council needs to do differently in the future? 1 minute.
Thank you. Great question. I'm a cyclist, so thank you for this one. I think that we've seen a long-term underinvestment in bike infrastructure. I think often when council think of, and the community think of bike riders, they think of races, essentially, where we need to be encouraging commuter cycling. I'm a commuter cyclist when I can be, but one thing that I have noticed is that the infrastructure is very poor, whether that's a bike lane that suddenly disappears into a roundabout or a street sign or something else. So I think it needs to be looked at as part of the integrated transport plan and the projects identified in that delivered as soon as possible.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay. Belinda?
Yes.
Okay, so what do you think council can do to encourage infill development rather than encourage urban sprawl?
Yes, it's a really good question. So that's partly addressed in the Ballarat strategy, which was worked on from about 2013 and adopted towards the end of 2016. Pushing development towards a compact city, so incorporating the push towards a 10-minute city for not having that sprawl. So it's setting the strategy and embedding that in the local planning scheme to encourage infill development is basically where the policy levers are. It's also a matter of working with the community around education around that, because sometimes what people will find when they're elected as a councillor, that the community often want to have their cake and eat it too, when it's explained to people that to prevent urban sprawl, you need infill development. People will agree, but then sometimes you'll have people objecting to large developments that are near them. So, for example, multi-storey or units and those sorts of things. Yep.
That's time. Thank you. Thanks, Belinda.
Yep.
Appreciate it. John Dooley. Almost there. Thanks for your patience, everyone. So there you are. Good, great. So in 2019, gas usage by Ballarat's residential and commercial sectors equated with 187,000 tonnes of CO2. Given the city's locale in the heart of one of the country's biggest wind energy producing districts, it seems a no-brainer that we should be all going all electric for homes and business. What is your thinking of this?
Yeah, the numbers are staggering. As I mentioned earlier, the wind farm, the business of renewable energy generation is all around us, and it's a very big business. And it's the fact that we could be setting up ourselves as a hub that would be a first, where we could make it so viable that we could buy electricity in a group as a city or suburbs or commercial development areas and just use renewable energy is there. I think that the other reality is that there's businesses that would flock to that, particularly if the cost of the energy was somewhat lower than the cost of them at cost of energy at the moment, both electricity and gas. So no, I believe that wind energy is so close to us that provides us with a lot of great features, and this is just one of that it'll reduce CO2 and also hopefully reduce the cost to the consumers.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So, Mark Harris.
Yes, Tony.
So Ballarat's biodiversity is well regarded by its citizens. What would you do to prioritise? What would be your priorities in ensuring that continues? Thanks. 1 minute.
Yes, look, I think we are. It's a big city, and habitat's a big issue, and we've got to be thinking about it. I think the koala overlays is a good example, and you can use that, I suppose, as a template in some respects. That if it's not functioning as it should, it means that your density of development is all wrong. So I think we've got to have that focus, I suppose, on habitat as a continuing dynamic, and I'd see it as a priority that you can, in many respects, influence at a council level.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. So, Geoff?
Yes, you've got me.
So solar PV is one of the fastest ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from electricity production. Victoria's lagged behind many states in solaring schools, with schools largely unused over summer and with connection to battery storage. This could help to address energy security for the community during the bushfire season. Do you see the council helping to progress this?
Not convinced it's a council issue. Obviously, we can show some leadership. It's clearly one we need to lobby the state government on in terms of schools, but the point's well made, and there are still lots of opportunities to extend solar PV across the roofing in the Ballarat region, and council clearly has again a leadership role, not necessarily to spend, but to bring the right players together to get these things happening.
Thank you, Geoff. And Kumuda?
Yep.
So how do you think the city should be offsetting its greenhouse gas emissions that it cannot reduce by other means?
Yeah, good question. So I think as part of any strategy, I think it would be really important to look at carbon capture. So looking at particularly through land restoration. So I know that this is something the Victorian government are starting to sort of look at funding, particularly around sort of soil capture, soil carbon capture. So look, I would be really, really keen to look at how council could work with neighbouring councils and state and federal government to kind of leverage whatever support there is to look at different ways of carbon capture and storage as a way to offset anything that we are still producing.
Thank you, Kumuda. And Jim Rinaldi, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so Ballarat's population is projected to grow quite large. How will you make sure planning keeps up with the growth?
Yeah, thank you, Tony. The transport has been mentioned before, and I'll just get into that area at the moment. Unless the public transport has dedicated lanes so they can move through the city faster than a vehicle, than a car, people are not going to get on them, and also the train system. So with the growth of the population, the planning, I believe, in the growth areas should be set out in a matrix, if you like, so you can see how many houses are going to be there, how many open spaces, how many people will be in that area, where are the playgrounds going to be, to realign with the 10-minute city. The question we've had before is also about our water system. We capture 6% of water or rain that falls from the sky. Certainly with the more housing and the more population we have, we need to plan better for those and grow those facilities, whether they're bigger tanks or bigger catchment.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, lastly with Grant. How do you, this is a question from the question and answer. How do we encourage green recycling business in Ballarat, e.g., and there was an example of a company in New Zealand grinding glass into fine sand and then recycling.
Okay, so I want more than a minute here because you cut me off short before, and I will specialise on recycling because recycling has been one of my platforms during the entire time of this council. And the City of Ballarat 3 years ago provided $5 million for a recycling facility in Ballarat and could have had it running 2 years ago if the state government had honoured us by allowing us to use the piece of land that we needed. Recycling is critical for this city and it should be done within this city. The glass that you talk about, recycled glass has a value to the community of Ballarat of $220 a tonne. $220 a tonne, and at the moment we're not making any use of it. The other recycled materials that are of most importance are aluminium cans. They're easy to do. Tin, milk bottles, plastic milk bottles, all of those commodities, the easy ones, should be being recycled now and sold commercially, and there are markets for them. The City of Ballarat I advocated 2 years ago for the City of Ballarat to engage with the university for the purpose of specifically looking at those elements in the rubbish bin which don't have a home at the moment. I believe every piece of material that goes in either the yellow bin or the green bin or the black bin, whichever colour lids you've got, it should be looked at as a commodity, not as waste. And it is doable. And it is a shame that we don't do it. It is but councils have got lazy, not just the Ballarat Council, every council have got lazy. It's too easy to chuck it in a truck and pay for it to go away out of your town. 50 years ago, every
Grant,
city, 50 years ago, every...
That's time. So, sorry, Grant, like I had to cut you off. You had shorter time earlier because you came into the meeting, we invited everyone and you just didn't respond to the invitation. So, and it's just in the interest of...
I was the first person to respond to you, I'm sorry. The very first.
Okay. Well, my apology.
I'll accept that.
So, thank you all. Thanks for putting your hands to get sorry, if all the attendees could put their hands together for the virtual hands together for the panelists. Thank you for your time. It's been been a great discussion. I've learnt a lot from doing this myself. Yes, I would like to invite the attendees to join BREAZE, to become a member, to make sure you're making your voice heard with the climate, and also to like the Green Drinks Facebook page to follow what we do. We've got some really good speakers lined up. Good luck to all the candidates who put their hand up, and yeah, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. And I appreciate your patience as well. There was a lot of people to get through.
Thanks, Tony. Great job,
Thank you
mate.
very much, Tony. Appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Tony,
putting
and
on the forum.
to all participants and everyone who attended and watched. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, everyone.
Wow.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Oh,
Thank
and
you
thanks,
all.
Tony. Thanks,
Thanks.
Louise.
Thanks, Tony and Paul.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.